Good evening and welcome to TVB News. The government has announced a detailed proposal to redistribute traffic among the 3 cross-harbour tunnels in order to reduce traffic jams. Apart from adjustments in fares, the Transport Bureau plans to introduce a time-varying toll plan to spread out the traffic. The plan will be rolled out later this year. Veronica Lin tells us more.
Having completed a public consultation, the government today announced a proposal for better distribution of traffic among the 3 cross-harbour tunnels. After the Western Tunnel returns to government ownership on August 1st, the government will implement the fare adjustments in 2 phases, with Phase 1 starting on 2nd of August. During the first phase, tolls for private vehicles crossing the Western Harbour Tunnel will be reduced to $60, whilst Cross-Harbour Tunnel and Eastern Harbour Tunnel fares will be increased to $30. Taxis will be charged $25 when crossing all 3 tunnels. Motorbikes fares are 40% that of private cars, with fares remaining the same for other types of vehicles. Later this year, with the full implementation of the electronic toll payment system, the second phase will be implemented. During peak hours from 7:30 a.m. to 10:15 a.m., as well as 4:30 p.m. to 7 p.m., Monday to Saturday, Cross-Harbour and Eastern Harbour Tunnel tariffs will be increased to $40 and Western Tunnel fare remaining the same at $60. Other times are considered off-peak. Private cars will be charged $30 at daytime and $20 at night for all 3 tunnels. As for Sundays and public holidays, the tariffs will be set at $25 for 10:15 a.m. to 7:15 p.m. for all 3 tunnels, and $20 for off-peak hours. Commercial vehicles apart from taxis will be charged $50 for all 3 tunnels. With the various fare adjustments, introduction of the e-toll and the time-varying toll plan, the government expects motorists to take time to familiarize themselves with the changes.
On the 2nd of August, we'll recover the Western Harbour crossing from the franchisee back to government. So on that date, there will be a change of the management company. And also, we need to execute or implement the e-toll. So there are a lot of changes to happen for this tunnel. So that is why we would consider that it would be more appropriate to allow more time for to allow motorists to adapt to such changes. So that is why we first implement the 633 scheme and then allow some time to implement the e-toll and finally switch to the time-varying toll scheme.
Authorities say after the implementation of the time-varying toll plan, there will be screens near the tunnels to display the fares in real time. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
Meanwhile, lawmakers doubt if the new arrangements can effectively divert traffic from congested areas. The Hong Kong Automobile Association thinks the government has not kept the option with the least cost.
Motorists may have to pay more in future when crossing the harbour. Under the latest proposal, toll fees could be different 2 minutes before or after peak hours. In that case, will motorists try to avoid the not-so-expensive time slot? This man thinks peak hours does not matter to him because if he has to cross the harbour at that time, he wouldn't mind the price difference of $10 or $20. This motorist says it's hard to predict when there is a congestion and it's basically impossible to make a U-turn when he's lining up at the Cross-Harbour Tunnel. Meanwhile, Ringo Lee, president of the Hong Kong Automobile Association, thinks raising the toll at the Cross-Harbour Tunnel by 50% means it will no longer be the cheapest harbour crossing for motorists. He also worries there will be congestion at all 3 harbour crossings when the proposal takes effect. Lawmakers, meanwhile, raised concerns on how Western Harbour Crossing, generally considered jam-packed in peak hours, can divert traffic from the 2 other crossings.
We worry about the price difference narrowed, which will create traffic jam in Western Harbour Crossing. And it may also affect the smoothness of the public transport because when the price difference becomes narrows, most of the travelers will change their patterns and use the Western Harbour Crossing.
Others say the fare hike is unfair for motorists residing in Kowloon East, Sai Kung and Tseung Kwan O.
For the Eastern Tunnel, yes, it is geographically it's more like a standalone location. So quite a lot of users. It would be very difficult for them to shift to other two tunnels.
Meanwhile, a $50 flat tunnel fee will apply to all franchised buses across the 3 harbour crossings. Kowloon Motor Bus Company said the change could allow the operator more flexibility in deploying its buses. Citybus and New World First Bus, meanwhile, noted buses are only accountable for 8% of traffic using the city's harbour crossings, adding that authorities should implement congestion charging soon.
The MTR announced yesterday that its profits from property development will be factored into its fare adjustment mechanism. The government said it is confident the MTR would not deliberately keep property profits low in order to affect fares. Timothy Lee reports.
An overhaul of the MTRs Fair adjustment mechanism will be taking place in June. The new fare formula will be linked to the level of earnings from properties owned by the railway operator. The new fare formula will include subtraction factors. The subtraction factor will be 0.6% if the MTR's property development earnings are below $5 billion. It will be 0.8% if property development earnings are above $10 billion. The arrangement has raised concerns that the MTR may intentionally keep property development earnings low by adjusting the schedule of property sales. Secretary for Transport and Logistics Lam Sai-hung said the MTR artificially controlling property development earnings to influence fares is not an issue. He said there are schedules in place for property development projects and the government will closely monitor the situation. This as the MTR's Hong Kong Transport Services Director, Jenny Yeung, emphasized that it is difficult for the company to estimate future profits from property development based on past records. Criticism is also directed at the fare adjustment mechanism for excluding the MTR's overall profits. Transport Chief Lam Sai-hung said the MTR requires resources to maintain the aging railway infrastructure in the city, with some tracks more than 40 years old. He added that it will take plenty of resources for the transport company to modernize and continue operating trains, but he hopes the new formula will address the needs of Hong Kong's residents. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Former lawmaker Albert Ho was remanded in custody today with his bail revoked. This follows his arrest by National Security Police yesterday on suspicion of perverting the course of justice. Ho, formerly a vice chairman of the Hong Kong Alliance in support of patriotic democratic movements of China, was charged with inciting subversion of state power in 2021. He was granted bail last year. Police rearrested the 71-year-old yesterday on suspicion of interfering with a family member of a prosecution witness in the so-called 35-plus primary election case. Prosecutors said today Ho had breached his bail conditions, which stipulate that he must not commit any act endangering national security. West Kowloon Court's Chief Magistrate Victor So revoked his bail and remanded him in custody. President Xi Jinping has left Moscow after a 3-day visit aimed at strengthening ties between China and Russia. Xi reiterated China's willingness to broker a peace deal for the 13-month conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and reports indicate no promises were made to Russian President Vladimir Putin on supplying weapons. The United States has urged Xi to persuade Putin to pull his armed forces out of territory captured by Russia during the start of the war. Nazvi Karim reports.
As President Xi Jinping left Russia after a 3-day visit, his intention was to depict China as a neutral force for peace, with no ulterior motives and opposed to the kind of bloc mentality displayed by the US and NATO allies in their support for Ukraine. Despite this, his meetings with Russian President Vladimir Putin will likely strengthen perceptions of looming Eastern alliance to counter Western hegemony. Xi and Putin, in a joint statement, called on the US to stop undermining global strategic security. They also said that two countries would forge closer strategic partnerships and conduct more joint military drills, insisting they were not directed against any third nation and did not constitute a military political alliance. Xi said he was willing to work with Putin to develop bilateral relations, including furthering talks on a pipeline from Russia to China via Mongolia, supplying 50 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually. The two men cautioned against moves that may push the Ukraine conflict to an uncontrollable phase. Putin said Moscow could use China's 12-point peace proposal to end the war in Ukraine if the West and Kiev were ready to accept a ceasefire and other conditions. The US has dismissed the plan, saying a ceasefire would only allow Russia to strengthen its positions on the front lines, and urged Xi to put pressure on Putin to withdraw from territories it has occupied.
You also probably know that China has already issued a 12-point plan for the conflict in Ukraine, which includes an essential point, and that's respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. We encouraged President Xi to advocate for this exact essential key point, which must include the withdrawal of Russian forces from sovereign Ukrainian territory consistent with the UN Charter.
Putin also said Russia was ready to welcome Chinese companies to fill in for Western businesses that left the country amid heavy economic sanctions imposed on Moscow, noting that Moscow and Beijing have increasingly used their currencies in trade between the two countries. Putin said Russia is open to expanding the use of the renminbi in trading with other partners while reducing reliance on the US dollar. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Welcome back to TVB News. In New York City, workers erected barricades around a Manhattan courthouse. This as the city braced for a possible indictment of former U.S. President Donald Trump over an alleged hush money payment to a porn star during his 2016 presidential campaign. It would be the first ever criminal case against any U.S. president. And on Saturday, Trump urged followers on social media to protest what he said was his looming arrest. But his call has so far generated mostly muted reactions from supporters. Still, some followers wore cowboy hats and American flag suits as they gathered along a road in Palm Beach, Florida, leading to Trump's residency in Mar-a-Lago. French President Emmanuel Macron is hoping a spate of reforms will help ease tension in the country, where protests continue over an unpopular pensions bill that would raise the retirement age by 2 years to 64. After Macron's government barely survived a no-confidence vote, the French leader said he was sticking with the bill. Strikes and protests continued on Tuesday, with protesters gathering in central Paris for a 6th straight day of demonstrations. Macron says he is looking to regain the initiative with reforms in the coming weeks and is hoping to ease tensions with a television interview scheduled for today. With Paris still piled high with garbage, the situation eased slightly as some garbage cleaners did return to work to clean up part of the mess. On the 16th day of the strike, almost 700 sanitation personnel and 206 garbage trucks were back on the streets providing minimal service. Elsewhere, sandstorms have blanketed Beijing and other northern regions on the mainland. Reports say maximum visibility in the capital was a mere 1 kilometer. Beijing's weather forecasts have stated severe levels of pollution. Many residents said they could taste soil in the air. The Central Meteorological Observatory has issued warnings cautioning residents against outdoor activities. The current sandstorm afflicting the capital is the most serious of the year so far. It has spread to at least 18 other provinces, cities and regions. Some experts said the sand originated from Mongolia and Inner Mongolia province, and because of the lack of rain and snow this month, strong winds have blown the large sand clusters further south. The Solomon Islands has awarded a multi-million-dollar contract to a Chinese state company to upgrade an international port in the capital of Honiara. The China Civil Engineering Construction Company was the only company to submit a bid in the tender, according to an official of the island nation. The official said the project would upgrade the port and 2 domestic wharves in the provinces. He brushed aside concerns that the port could be deepened for Chinese naval access. The Solomon Islands struck a security pact with Beijing last year, prompting concerns from the United States and its allies, including Australia, New Zealand and Japan, over China's ambitions to build a naval base in the region. Both Beijing and the Solomon Islands have denied the pact would allow a naval base. Locally, authorities are looking into whether human errors were involved when a song related to the 2019 social unrest was played instead of the Chinese national anthem during a sport event in Bosnia involving the Hong Kong team. That's according to Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan in the first anti-chamber exchange session at the Legislative Council after the lifting of the mask mandate. Chan said the administration has been in contact with Google, urging them to improve their search results for the national anthem.
Unfortunately, up to now, the mistake is still there, and Google is still unwilling to remove the mistake. This is very undesirable because this will give us an impression that is it Google wants the mistake to continue. And regarding Hong Kong organizations, when they participated in international events outside Hong Kong, they should pay attention to the national anthem, which should be properly and correctly displayed or shown to the public. And if there is anybody who has not followed the guidelines strictly and thus caused the mistake, we will impose serious punishment on it.
During the session, some lawmakers also brought up the issue of Japan's plans to discharge wastewater from a nuclear plant into sea, prompting concerns of food safety around town. That's the news. Thanks for watching.